2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. Today we dive into the pioneering work of music thinking, which started many years ago. So, welcome to another special episode. And if you're new to the Power of Music Thinking podcast, let me explain. We have two different kinds of episodes. The first is a conversation with a guest, some of the world's most interesting people who are also musicians or are active with music. I spoke with people from all over the world, from New Zealand to California, from Finland to India. And my hypothesis is that people who make music have a musical upbringing or are active with music in some way. They are influenced by this in the way they think, organize, and collaborate with others. So in the conversation episodes, we talk about what people think and do. We hear about their music and sonic experiences, and we share stories, analogies, hacks, and tricks to inspire you, the listener, to do a better job, whatever this may be. This is also the basic of music thinking. Everything is connected. If we use music as an analogy to understand the world, we get a rich framework that helps us to translate universal patterns into practical actions. So, if you want to explore music thinking further, subscribe and listen to more than 50 episodes. Check out the Jam Cards, an inspirational card deck that boosts brainstorming with sound, among other things. And you can also read the Power of Music Thinking book, which explains the 6 cues and 4 phases of the framework and how you can use music thinking in business or your daily life. So far about the conversations. But from time to time, I'm also doing special episodes. These are more experimental, where I try out different kinds of storytelling. In the specials, I experiment with other themes and styles. For example, the sound walk through Art Biennale of Venice in Italy with the unique field recordings linking art, sound, and the historical city, or the Inspiring Books episodes, just a few episodes back. Actually, that was a mix between a conversation and a special episode. And another early example is the visit of the green vinyl records, which has a much lower environmental impact than regular vinyl producers. So for today, we rewind 30 years to the 90s of the last century. That is, even before the iPhone, which just came in 2007, there was no Spotify or other streaming, YouTube, Twitter, or any other mass social media. Even Wikipedia was not yet online. So, only academics, early adopters, and the digerati had access to the internet. As you might know, I pioneered various digital concepts in the 1990s. I produced CD-ROMs of edutainment and infotainment. That is a portmanteau of education and entertainment, so edutainment, and information and entertainment, so infotainment. So these were the buzzwords nearly 30 years ago, exactly like we use AI today, artificial intelligence, and everybody talks about it. It was the big thing in that time. I produced bilingual CD-ROM titles like Mozart on Tour and Great Conductors, for which we won prizes. And we also had titles like the musical Les Misérables, the story of Joe Cocker, the famous rock voice, for which we recorded extra blue screen shots in the Hilton in Antwerp, and one CD-ROM about the atomic bomb, which was never published. There were many reasons why the CD-ROM business was not successful, and maybe I will produce another episode about it. If this interests you, let me know via the social media or email, and then let's think about it. But parallel to the CD-ROMs, the commercial internet was coming up. Unforgettable when you got online onto the internet, you had to connect to your computer via a modem with a telephone line, and then then you were in. So like a famous commercial announced 2 years later. Okay, this is not the story of the internet. I want to share with you something I invented, and maybe others at the same time, something I called online interviews. But to start with the beginning, I worked for EuroArts, a film production company specializing in documentaries and live music performances. I worked in the new media department. Yeah, that's what everybody called it at that time. It was just new, or sometimes they called even multimedia, but our department was called new media. And since 1990, EuroArts has closely operated with the Berlin Philharmonic, one of the most famous orchestra. And we had one episode back with a violinist who played there years later. So prestigious regular concert events, such as the annual Europakonzert, the famous open-air concerts at Waldbühne in Berlin, and the annual New Year's Eve concerts. So accompanying the live TV broadcasting and recordings of these events, we started a forum on our Classic Open platform in the internet, where people from all over the world could ask questions. Questions about the online interview we were doing then weeks later. And at the moment suprême, I was asking the questions, so I picked them from the forum to one of the artists. And that's the basic idea of the online interview. I did this with classical artists like Zubin Mehta, the great conductor, singer Anne-Sophie von Otter, baritone Bryn Terfel, and violin superstar Gil Shaham. And for our Jazz Open platform, I did interviews with guitar hero B.B. King, the jazz and world saxophonist Charlie Mariano, and the juju artist from Nigeria, King Sunny Ade, just to name a few. But the very first one we did with world-famous conductor and pianist Daniel Barenboim in Paris, a day before the broadcasting of the Europe concert on May 1st, which is still the date for the Europakonzert of the Berlin Philharmonic.
Henry, I just want to tell you, if you have time and are interested, I am live now on the internet because I'm doing the Berlin Philharmonic 1st of May concert tomorrow morning, and it's live on the internet now with questions and I don't know what. So
imagine you are at the end of the last century. It is 1997 in Paris, or better yet, in Versailles, at the Opéra Royale at Versailles. So at such a historic place, how do you get onto the internet at that time? Well, we had to convince our colleagues to block their fax machine for an hour or so, to connect a modem and answer the questions in real time online so that everybody worldwide could see it at that moment. And because we were in a different part of the opera, we had to throw, I think it was 20 meters of telephone cable out of the window and then pull it in where the telephone connection and the fax machine were, unplug the machine and then installed the modem and we were into the internet. So exciting. And for this interview, it was our first, like I just said. We had hired a journalist who could type with 10 fingers at a high speed to make it real time and live.
I never knew I could type so quickly.
So I could ask the questions and the answers were directly typed into the forum. So This was also the maestro's first encounter with the internet, and we explained what we were doing and who could see the interview. Remember, it was just typing text into a forum.
I'm on it now, yeah.
Yeah, and because I always like to have a backup, I took my private Dutch recorder with me, and I'm sharing the original recordings with you. So this is what you just heard. So please bear in mind that the audio was just a backup, with a lot of noises around. At some moments you hear the typing on the keyboard and also the startup sounds of the modem you just heard. You will hear it again. That went down regularly because the connection was not stable. And Daniel Barenboim was speaking very slowly and, in that sense, empathically with the journalist who had to type every word into the laptop live. Okay. Here's a longer snippet of one of the questions about the concert. And remember, the questions came not from me as an interviewer, so I was just a medium via our platform. People from all over the world asked questions, and I was just asking questions. So it was a nice atmosphere, not very formal like the interview and the interview. We just talked, and there were also different people in the room, like my friend and boss in that time, Harald Wilhelm, and some other people from the record company and so on. So everybody had a look at these amazing things. So here's the snippet of the concert, which included Maurice Ravel, Le Tombeau de Couperin, from Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. It was the piano concert number 13 in C major, which Daniel Barenboim conducted from the piano, and the Eroica, so the third symphony from Ludwig van Beethoven. And by the way, I found an online link to that concert and put it into the show notes. So it looks like the whole concert is available now free of charge. So really funny. A lot of things are coming together.
Well, this whole program was conceived for Versailles, not only for this concert, but because it takes place here. Mozart played here himself. So the connection to Mozart is, in a way, even stronger than the connection to Beethoven is the connection of idea of Beethoven's admiration for Napoleon, as long as he believed that Napoleon was fighting for human freedom, and that's when he dedicated it. And when he realized that this was not the case and became disillusioned, he withdrew the dedication. But Mozart actually came to Versailles and played in Versailles, and the Ravel, of course, as a homage, if you want, to France, where this concert takes place.
Funny, did you hear the ticking of the keyboard? Another question was about the difference between playing an instrument like the piano and conducting, because Daniel Barenboim is doing both. And how do you do both at the same time? So that's for the piano concerto, where you conduct from the place of the pianist.
Playing an instrument and conducting is, on the one hand, a way of saying two professions, but it is one and the same thing, namely making music. And by making music, I mean not just playing notes. There's a difference between playing notes and the concept of making music. Playing notes means that you produce certain sounds on whatever instruments or whatever orchestra that have basically no relation or very little relation, or not well thought out relation between the notes. Or you can play also occasionally very...
Yeah. Sorry?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to think.
Okay.
That have no relation or very little relation between the notes.
Yeah, you can also play a collection of very beautiful notes. That still does not amount to making music. What I mean by making music is when every note, no matter on what instrument, if it is an orchestra that is playing, has some kind of interrelation which the notes that were played before it, simultaneously with it, and the notes that follow. In other words, it's the element of time that goes into that. And when there is an organic relationship in the same way that a plant grows in nature in an organic way. When there is something that binds all that and brings it to a level where it is impossible to divide it anymore, where it becomes one, to become one, to have an organic thing is basically to become one. And this is what I mean by making music.
Beautiful, so how he explains and makes the analogy to plants. By the way, there was a lot of noise in the background, and I didn't cut it or edit anything. I want you to give the impression to also be in the same room. And to hear the window was open. It was super warm on that day, so 1st of May. So you hear all the noises from the outside because we didn't record it, or it was not for recording. It was just for the internet, which was something completely different. So another question was about the baton. So that's for non-musicians, the stick that the conductor is using to show the clear cues for the orchestra players.
Funnily enough, I have broken many batons in the opera pit. Very seldom on the concert stage, but in the opera pit, because sometimes in a moment of excitement by hitting the wall behind me, for instance, or on something like this.
And there was a question. That was a very short one. And there was a question about Europe, because it was the Europa-Concert. What role can play music in Europe?
Music has a great role to play in the if you want, in the rebuilding or in the redefinition, probably more exact word, of Europe, because music has on one hand the capacity to express things which are very much linked to the environment of a certain place or a certain group of people. That's why there is a certain difference between German music and Italian music and German music. But at the same time, and just as important, it has the ability to trespass these national limits.
And because he was born in Buenos Aires, there was also a question about tango.
And the tango is something that was developed, first of all, not developed, but brought to its height of expression and of fame through a Frenchman called Carlos Gardel, who was born in Toulouse. He was not Argentine, he was a Frenchman. And the music, the actual music of the tango, has the habanera rhythm as a base to it. But habanera, the word says it comes from Cuba. In other words, it went from Cuba to Europe. And that's the most famous habanera, I suppose, is still in Carmen of Bizet. So, I mean, you have the connection to Europe immediately. And then came back there. And also, the tango was a form of music and of dance early in the century in Argentina that was very much of either of the low class or of very, let's say, in today's terminology, you would call dubious moral standards. I mean, it was played in houses of ill repute and in the streets, and the pianists who played in those houses of ill repute at the beginning of the century in Buenos Aires were mostly of Russian and Polish origin. So that there is the tango is actually a very complex form of music and dance. I mean, one could go on for hours and hours about it. I mean, the tango, for instance, was danced first of all only between two males, usually as a form of duel in a situation of jealousy related to a woman. It was not danced by a man and a woman, and the erotic connotation of the tango is a later development. It's a fascinating subject.
Uh-huh. Very good. Leads us to... Well, sorry about the sound effects, but yeah, just imagine this was the way how we did it. And from tango and classical music, there came a question into pop and rock music and the relation to classical music. What do you think about this? And I think I found this quite surprising and very interesting. So have a listen.
One very positive I can say about pop music, and especially about rock musicians, is that they have two great qualities that I find sometimes missing in classical music. One is the ability to improvise. I mean, all classical music, European music, when we talk about Mozart and Bach, they were all great improvisers. Now we have, as it were, become the slaves of the written note and are so preoccupied with being so-called historically correct, whether this exists or not. But one very often forgets that, be it Mozart or at a later stage, Liszt and Chopin were great improvisers. In other words, it was the combination of their mastery and knowledge with the energy that came from improvising something on the spur of the moment. And this, I think, that classical musicians can learn from pop musicians, how to be able to give themselves so that they can really improvise. I mean, the jazz improvisations are masterful in many ways. And the other is the energy. There is a sort of energy in the expression of practically all kinds of pop music, which is sometimes missing from the classical musician. That's the positive. The negative, from my point of view, is that some of it is unnecessarily primitive. It is unnecessarily primitive in the harmony. It is also unnecessarily primitive in the rhythm and in the melody. In other words, all three things. And I think that in that respect, the pop world has a lot to learn from the classical and vice versa.
Perfect.
So interesting. that part about the unnecessarily primitive. Interesting idea. But if you listen closely, and maybe also from a business perspective, and if you are a regular listener, you know that I have to say now, research about orchestration. So in what way are you orchestrating, and in what way are you improvising, and how this goes together. And if you know the book, there is one scheme that shows 5 positions of leadership from the perspective of a composer, the perspective of a producer, of an improviser, of a conductor, and also what I call the master, and also from instrument perspective. And if you take this from the way how Barenboim is combining improvisation, all the energy, I think we can learn a lot if we analyze more what music is doing and how this can inspire us for our endeavor, everything that we're doing. So for me, these were the insights, and also nice to hear back nearly 30 years ago. So at the very end, so I also asked him, how was this kind of interview? Because it was our first. And yeah.
Much better than the television interviews when you have to sort of put everything compact in one sentence and give only superficial answers. You can never go.
Yeah. And it sounds like you know what you want and and that's
only slogans.
And people have a totally different impression.
That's the name Chomsky made into you.
Yes.
Exactly. No,
he refused to go to make any interview on television because of that. And he's right. It's the same problem that we have in the music, that there is the relationship between time and space doesn't fit.
No.
In other words, you can only really give slogan answers and it immediately, automatically reduces it to a level of
Right.
superficiality, unless
Yeah.
you're talking about a witty remark, which of course off the cuff, which is a wonderful
Yeah.
thing. But otherwise, it's basically,
Yeah.
you know, and this is much better because you're not limited in the time, and you can.
Or space, exactly.
And you have a space.
Unlimited access, and you can record. I mean, anything you want. You can store information. People can click on your name and find out a whole history about you. They can find out the concerts you've done. They can do research on it. Something in between sort of written press, I think, and television. It's
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
you can use photos. You
Yeah, you still heard the modem trying to connect while we talk, and I just let to hear you this because this is so. Yeah, it was a conversation. Everything went. Yeah, someone was talking. Sometimes talking 3 people at the same time, and this was really nice. And it was the first online interview we did in the opera in Versailles. Okay, so this was this. Fun fact, by the way, in that time, we could even manage to include our URL, that was classicopen.de, in the titles after the concert to drive traffic to the site. You must imagine, so there was a live broadcasting. It was, you have to understand, it was 11 o'clock in Paris, and for example, it was 7 o'clock in the afternoon in Tokyo. And many early adopters saw the broadcasting online and also our link to the website. And many people were connected to the internet, which, as a matter of fact, broke down completely. So no one could reach the site because of all the traffic. So it was some kind of exciting DDoS attack without knowing. So this was also our pioneering thing. So we learned a lot about this. We did all the effort and everything in time. And at the very end, at the moment supreme, when everybody should have a look what we did and the interviews and how they came from the internet and the answers from Daniel Barenboim, people couldn't see it because the website was completely loaded. Okay, I hope you enjoyed, like me, to switch back in time and experience insights from music, something that had an influence, although I just realized this many years later, on what finally became music thinking. So let me know if you like these stories. I also have some recordings of Isaac Hayes and B.B. King at the Jazz Open and Zubin Mehta at the Waldbühne. So let me know via LinkedIn, Instagram, or send me an email. And also, I'm always looking for inspiring people to have a conversation with. So if you know someone that would qualify for a great conversation, not necessarily a musician, it can be someone. Doesn't matter the age, doesn't matter where they come from, maybe someone also very different than me, so white old man. They have to do something with music and some connection and maybe something surprising. So let me know via the socials or email, and maybe you can listen then to a brand new conversation. All right, so this was the special on pioneering music thinking. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this, because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email, podcast@musicthinking.com.